Hello and welcome back to the Argyle HR Leadership Forum, Trends, Talent Analytics, and Change Management. My name is Michael with Argyle. A couple of notes before I turn things over to our panel moderator. First, a quick reminder to stop by our sponsors' virtual booths at any time during today's event and for the following week. Our partners are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience. At any time during today's event, you can visit their virtual booths from the main agenda page, which include complimentary materials, information, and meet and greet opportunities. Now, to ask questions throughout the session, simply type into the Q&A chat and we will address your questions at the end of the session. And now, without further delay, I would like to introduce our moderator, Loretta Siggers, Vice President of Human Resources and Talent Development with Cambridge College. We're excited to have Loretta and our panelists with us for a panel discussion titled HR Technology Trends for the New Year. Loretta, thank you so much for being here. Welcome, and over to you.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for that introduction. It's great to be here today. And I'm going to have our panel introduce themselves. We can start off with Andrea.
Hi, everyone. It's lovely to be here today. My name is Andrea Herron, and I'm the head of people at WebMD.
Thank you. Clifford, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, good afternoon. Cliff Rich, Director of HR Technology with Cardinal Health.
And Carly.
Hi, everyone. My name is Carly Ackerman. I'm the Director of Customer Experience for Strategic and Partnership Accounts at Eightfold AI, which is a talent intelligence platform.
Great. Thank you for that. And so we're going to start out the panel first with just a quick question for all of them to describe for us one piece of HR technology that they've begun using over the last couple of years. So we'll start out with you, Andrea.
Yeah, I'm going to go for a real hardball here and say online trivia and bingo, believe it or not, has become very valuable HR technology as we have built a hybrid and remote culture. So, I think we have to be creative about what technology means to all of us. And that's probably been one of the biggest ads from a technology perspective, as silly as that may seem. Virtual bingo, trivia.
I love it. I love it. Carly, what about you?
So I don't want to promote any specific technology, but as someone who's played in the learning and career development space for the past 8 years or so, I'm really excited to see HR embrace more advanced technologies like AI and machine learning, with the idea to personalize experiences and support workers and really taking control of their own careers. It's the Wild West out there, so let's use technology to make it a little bit easier to navigate.
And Cliff, what about you?
Yeah, I think similar to what Carly said, not going to advocate for any particular platform. We're at Cardinal Health. We have the majority of our HR platforms are all SaaS, but Workday does have a pretty cool function called Opportunity Graph, where employees can go in and they can see where their predecessors have gone after the role that they've been in, which gives them a real insight into potential career development happening.
Nice. Thank you all for that. So we're going to start our panel with questions. Again, feel free to put any questions out there in the chat and we'll get those answered for you as well. But why don't we start out with Carly with our first question. What are some of the applications of artificial intelligence and machine learning in human resources?
Well, as you heard, this is a passion area of mine, but having access to more data, while it's a great thing, it's not really useful unless you know how to harness it. And there's really little that you can do with it until you're able to harness it. So whereas humans are really fabulous at applying judgment and understanding context and thinking critically, machines are just far more powerful aggregators and pattern mappers and repeaters. So HR leaders are increasingly expected to know and understand at a really deep level the entirety of their organization's workforce. And when you think about a workforce in this day and age, it's not just about your full-time employees. It's also about your hourly workers, your contractors, your gig workers, or freelancers in some cases. It might even consider understanding alumni and candidates, silver medalists, folks who have applied in the past. So imagine trying to answer the question of who's the right person to do X or to deliver X value to the business. It would be impossible for a human to do that. So machine learning and AI take the guesswork and the time out of these types of tasks, and they allow HR to quickly assess the workforce, understand the skills that are available within the workforce, and help the humans who are doing the day-to-day work make decisions about how and where to deploy talent against business problems.
I would add to that, I think that's all accurate and definitely the way it's going as we get smarter and faster with data aggregation. One hesitancy I have is, there's good data in, bad data out. So, or good data in, good data out, or bad data in, bad data out. And I think we have to be extremely cautious about the language we're using, the representation, the metrics that we are using, so we don't undermine our DE&I efforts, that we're representing the data correctly and not going against the employee's best interest. So just a caution, but I do think that's the right direction, but we have to keep an eye on that as well.
Thank you, Andrea. And I think Cliff, you had something to add as well.
Yes, I think going back to the comment about solving business problems kind of through the HR lens, I think about what we're doing in the area of identity management, whether that's helping our customer service call centers, not customer service, sorry, employee facing call centers help employees get into the system faster with something like a voice print instead of having to use a password for self-service. And then also in the identity space, figuring out anomalies in employee behavior to identify potential insider threats.
Great questions, great answers. All right, how can people get started with using AI or machine learning in their HR practices? And I think we started talking about some of that, but anybody else? Carly, want to add some more to that?
Yeah, and I think Cliff and I are probably well aligned on this, but you always have to start with a real business problem. Is your tech function looking to expand cybersecurity capacity? Is your finance function looking to introduce more technical acumen? Is there some sort of innovation initiative being driven by one of your verticals? Starting there is super helpful to start proving the power of the technology and then scaling. You don't want to try to solve everything all at once. And I think it's really important to consider who in HR is going to spearhead any of these experiments. Maybe you have an upskilling initiative, so your chief learning officer makes the most sense to be the spearhead. Maybe you're trying to enable mobility, so talent management might be the right spearhead. Cliff was mentioning access management, right? There's close connection with IT that needs to happen there as well. So I think choosing the right combo of HR and business leadership to drive adoption is really critical once you have the strategy laid out.
Anyone else have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think chatbots emerge as a business application that most leaders are quick to implement if they can, that drive self-service and a better customer experience, and then free up our folks on the calls to do more complex tasks and troubleshooting. Thank
you. How do you think the HR function will evolve as more HR technology migrates to the cloud? Andrea, I want to start with you on that one.
Yeah, what's interesting, throwing the cloud in there, but I think there's something to it, because just as we want businesses to evolve, HR and our processes need to evolve alongside with it. And when we're working in the cloud, ideally it would lead to more collaboration, making it easier to work anywhere. Maybe you're less dependent on a VPN. You can streamline and be working in things together. So long story short, time saver and efficiency, which really allows HR to do higher level and more strategic work, which is, going to add way more value than having to work more manual processes and systems.
Carly, did you want to add to that?
I totally agree. I think shifting to the cloud is swapping your screwdriver for a power drill. So I think where cloud becomes really transformative is when it's introduced as an enabler of, again, a really well-designed strategy. And I think that it's also the type of technology that's going to likely have a significant cost hurdle to begin with. But as Andrea mentioned, you're going to see efficiencies in the long run if you're thinking about trying to create a business case for why you need to shift to the cloud.
Cliff, what about you? Anything to add?
I think Carly and Andrea hit the nail on the head. I think the only other thing I'd add is that it, I think, again, illustrates freeing up bandwidth for HR leaders and then the technology teams that support them. Because if you're in a cloud or a SaaS model, a lot of that's taken care of by the vendor. You can kind of push the vendor to then come up with use cases or say, hey, we have this problem. What are you doing with other clients? What are you doing to help us in this area? So I think the moving to the cloud also helps further closer ties with your vendors and opportunities that you may not otherwise be exposed to.
You know, that also makes me think, as you're talking about offloading some of that work to the vendors, I think you could say something similar about self-service for employees, because I think a lot of cloud-based programs now are very user-friendly. And so, you know, in traditional systems or previous systems, the HR team had to do a lot of the manual data entry and administrative side, and a lot more modern things in the cloud, and different applications are much more user-friendly for kind of all types of staff, from hourly to exempt, which would also be a big time saver. Get out of that manual work.
So we received a question here in the chat. How do we address privacy concerns with employees when we are using AI tools that combine / aggregate data to points that may be that they are concerned may be PI? What is that? P2?
As PII, personal identifiable information.
There you go.
I think that my quick response to this, and I'm betting that Carly has a much better answer, is just to anonymize, assure employees that when that data is intake, we've completed the intake process, that we're anonymizing it to just show trends and actionable analytics based on a broad sample of the employee population.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think when you're exploring AI tools, obviously you want to do your homework and understand how the AI works. You want to be working with an AI tool that's explainable, meaning that, you know, you should be able to understand how the decisions are being made, how recommendations are being offered up, and also understanding the data that they're leveraging in their models. In a lot of cases, AI tools are being powered by external data, meaning that the data that they're aggregating is publicly available. Obviously, when you commingle that with an HRIS, if you were to integrate it with an HR system, there will be HR data commingled as well. But as Cliff mentioned, you know, there are ways to identify what fields are being included in the model, to mask or to hide certain attributes of the data as well, and to ensure that the data that's being leveraged for any sort of decision-making always has a human on the other end of it.
And once you've done all of that great groundwork, you have to tell people. I mean, I think sometimes we get in our own way and we do all the work, and then we forget to tell the employees all the work that we've done to, you know, assuage their concerns. So have a meeting, talk about it when you roll it out, make this an initial bullet point. And if you want to really get ahead of it, pick out those few people that you know will have the strongest and loudest opinions and talk to them first, so that when it does roll out, then they're not the loudest voice in the room, but rather they already understand and can actually be an advocate for it as well.
Thank you all. Thank you all. The next question we have up is, how will the HR function change as the transition to hybrid or fully virtual work becomes permanent? Who wants to start us off there?
It's the $1 million question. I'll go first. It's going to change like everything has. One thing that, aside from all the technology that's now available, I mean, there's been a huge uptick in what is available. So I think you have to kind of reevaluate. Did you add 50 new platforms, apps, tools, tech? Do you really need 5 going forward? Is it analysis paralysis because now people don't know where to get what? So I think you should take an inventory of what technology is going to serve you in a hybrid or mixed environment, like, and narrow it down, because less is better in this case, I think. And then also, I'm just going to say it again, but you have to keep diversity, equity, inclusion in the front of your mind, because as we go hybrid, as there are some people in the office and some people not, you can fall into recency bias. You can unintentionally give more job opportunities, promotions, salary increases to people you see because of our innate biases, and underrepresented groups, and especially women, traditionally aren't able to go into the office as much because of caretaking responsibilities. So please keep that in mind as hybrid. Use the tools, but maybe figure out which ones actually serve you going forward and ensure that they don't undermine your efforts for equity.
Yeah, I think to underscore Andrea's point, it's all about employee experience right now in this new world. So determining the right tool set that's going to enable that experience, whether you are a fully virtual or you're a hybrid or you're driving folks back to the office. I think it's keeping what are the problem statements of your workforce top of mind in solving what that architecture looks like is most important. And one thing that I've seen a lot coming up around employee experience is a new expectation that the organization in some way serves as a social safety net for the workforce. So there's just this tighter link between work and family, work and home. And I'd be interested to know, Andrea, Cliff, if with your workforce, you're seeing any tools that are supporting wellness and well-being, or if that's been coming up as well as part of the tech stack for employee experience.
Absolutely.
So yeah, let me jump in here and say I agree with Carly and Andrea both with what you said. I'll get to the piece on employee wellness in a minute, but I wanted to share, I think, where the HR function has become increasingly important is capturing employee feedback. You know, gone are the days of the once a year survey, right? We have to figure out a way to shorten those feedback loops. So if that's weekly or bi-weekly, and then getting those insights to business leaders, that's where I think HR is really going to show their value in driving employee retention, elevating the brand to attract people to the brand. And then I think aside from the whole work from home piece, we also have to look at demographics, right? We have the silver tsunami of the boomer generation retiring. We have decreasing birth rates. So there's the war for talent is just only going to become a smaller and smaller talent pool. So we really need to be, HR really has to be helping, Carla, to your point, with the employee experience. So employees want to stay. They want to encourage other peers, family members, or people in their network to join the company. So I just wanted to pile on there. And then Carly, to your question about the wellness tools, I think during the pandemic, our leadership team did a really good job in constantly messaging the employee assistance program tools that we have. So I think there's all kinds of resources that people did not even know the company made available for free, whether it's to help a mother or somebody who's a caretaker for an aging parent that had something come up and they need somebody to help with childcare on short notice, or they need somebody to help with elder care. And then there's counseling. So I think really it's HR then having that bullhorn constantly to remind people, hey, here are all the resources we offer to you because we value you not only as an employee, but your family as well.
I would agree with that. And just to add one more thing, companies do offer a lot and most people don't know. And we can't underestimate the need for especially mental health resources right now. And when someone is having a tough time, the last thing that they want to do is go into the internet, click 85 links down, try to find the number, and now, oh my God, I have to talk to a person. It's too much. Okay, so make it easy. Do a cheat sheet, do a hot link, have your managers like a flyer if you're in person. But the easier and more accessible you can make it, the more likely people are to use it. And you're already set it up. You've done most of the work. And again, it's communication. And I completely agree about the surveys, because what someone needed 6 months ago could be totally different than what they need or want now. So pulse surveys with quick turnarounds and kind of helping that guide which tools, which technology, which benefits you can offer, and then telling people about them is going to be, I think, your biggest recipe for success there.
So it looks like we have a question in the chat, a couple questions coming in. Do you see HR departments or IT departments pushing more HR technology solutions in enterprise environments? Which department usually takes the lead? That's always an interesting question. Who wants to take that one?
I think it depends on who's paying the bill. That's a little bit tongue in cheek, but I think really it goes back to collaboration at the C-suite level. So if the chief HR officer has something that they are really passionate about, they should be having a conversation with the CIO or chief technology officer on options. But then this again goes back to the vendor piece, right? So if you're asking vendors for, hey, here's a gap or here's a need, come back to me with solutions. That's where that vendor is going to have the opportunity to really show their value.
Anyone else want to add anything?
I definitely agree that it's, who has the business case and the purse strings associated with the initiative. An interesting model I've seen with a couple of clients is a CIO role specifically within HR. So cutting out the middle person, so to speak, and having somebody in an IT role who really understands the needs of HR from that perspective. I think that's just an interesting model that cuts through some of the politicking that might need to happen.
Thank you, Carly. And it looks like we have another question coming in. With having worked with these technologies, why do you feel it is so difficult to retain employees or get people to apply for positions that will stay?
It's a good question.
That's a good question.
I mean, I think there's many factors. I mean, for one, you think about how many things in your life are personally tailored to you, that are curated for your likes, that you are fed options on a daily basis, and jobs and benefits and opportunities are no different. We're used to being, just highly curated. And so especially when people who are newer to the workforce or started during the pandemic, or we've all just gotten used to that level of personalization, realize that I don't get to design every moment of every day or every benefit package, but then this company over here says it's a little better. I think the stigma of moving around and doing that has also gone down. So I think you have to make it more than just, this is what we offer, take it or leave it. There has to be a value proposition. There has to be more to the work than the day in, day out, and offer as much personalization and choice as you possibly can. Because we're just all used to it now, and it's an expectation. It's not just a nice to have anymore, from my view.
And I think technology is not the silver bullet for culture and employment brand.
Like that.
Yes, that. I was gonna say, Carly, you kind of took the words right out of my mouth. I was gonna say people don't leave companies, they leave managers. So you could have the best technology solution out there, the best user experience, but if you're working for a manager that is not a fit, people are going to vote with their feet. So ironically, that's another opportunity where AI can come back into the mix. Is somebody a net exporter of talent? Is it an anomaly or is it a trend, right? And then that should be a conversation on that person's development.
Great. So let's ask a couple more questions here. How do you think upskilling and reskilling needs in your businesses are going to change over the next couple of years, and why?
I think this is actually a great tack on to the previous question. The data would suggest that employees have been leaving jobs for better development opportunities at almost the same rate that they are leaving for better comp. So upskilling and reskilling needs to be central to your entire talent strategy, right? And I think speaking of employment brand, nobody wants to join an organization that is not committed to growing your career. So I think the next era of employee learning is really going to be about employee-led learning. It needs to be, to Andrea's point, hyper-personalized, meeting somebody where they're at, focus on their aspirations, not just on the role that they're in today. And, speaking of HR tech trends, this is where the world of learning experience platforms is headed, connecting people to the right opportunities, whether it's specific learning content or maybe it's a stretch role, just to help them close the gap between where they are today and where they'd like to see themselves in the next couple of years.
Something I really love about kind of this idea about employee-led learning and all of the tech that's coming out to support it is, you think about adult learning styles are very different than maybe a traditional education system, the time available, the attention span we have, but also we have a lot of neurodiverse individuals who are in the workforce. We have a lot of people with various disabilities that sometimes get left out of the traditional, 2-hour manager training program. So I'm excited for where this upskilling and upleveling can go with technology, and it can be more inclusive for people who traditionally may not have been able to take advantages fully.
And it looks like we have a couple questions here coming in now in the chat. With having worked with technologies, oh wait, did we do that one already? Sorry. Have you seen communication software that helps HR teams with personalization of information? So any software out there that HR teams can use to personalize information? Anyone?
Not that I've come across. I think that sounds like a really good Google search. Sorry.
I think maybe the closest I've heard of are a couple of vendors who leverage AI and natural language processing to develop very specific and personalized prose, like written content. I'm not sure if it's been leveraged in the communications specific space just yet, but think about, if you wanted to write an article about something changing with corporate culture. I've seen some scary good products out there that sound just like a real person, using the same voice that's used across the organization and other blogs and whatnot. So I'm sure that if it doesn't already exist, it's rapidly forthcoming.
Thank you, Carly.
Yeah, and
We
a
have
quick-
another. Go ahead.
Sorry, quick comment there too. I think aside from software, think about personas, right? So get with your communications partner, because you're not going to communicate to somebody in a distribution center the same way you are somebody who works, in an office space.
That's a great point. Yeah.
So we have another question in the chat. Do you find people accepting and hungry for more data to make strategic decisions, or are people feeling intimidated by the sheer amount of data?
Yes. You two may have more, day-to-day insight than I do, but I think leaders especially are always looking for data to justify the spend, keeping the initiative, adding more value. And that's always true. HR metrics sometimes can be more difficult because employee morale isn't easily measured in ways that other things are. But what I have found is it can be overwhelming just to send data. If you're not able to tell a story with it or make a point, you might as well not provide it because it's not actually helpful. It just is overload. And to the question before about communication, in my opinion, one of the best trainings you could probably do for someone who is going to write employee communications is take a storytelling class. Because as humans, we respond to stories and personalized information. So I think take a storytelling class or learn about it and then use the data to tell a story versus just giving raw numbers, because most of the time that's not really going to help anything.
Right. I have to agree with you, Andrea. They are looking for a lot of data now. Now they're bringing back the old-fashioned HR dashboards again. People want to see dashboards, especially how everyone's doing. So I think data is here to stay for a while. Another question we have here is there technology or HR concern that should be considered in the next 3 to 5 year horizon from a strategic standpoint? So any technology or HR concern that should be considered?
I think Carly touched on this earlier, and it really goes back to seeing people as your strategic asset. So if you're not providing upskilling, if you're not providing a great user experience when they go to do self-service, and if they don't feel like they have options with their career development, they're going to leave. So turnover is very costly, as well as onboarding is kind of the same subset. But typically, when you onboard somebody, they don't step in day one ready to go, right? You're going to have a gap there as well. I'm kind of starting to go down a rabbit hole, but the bottom line is you got to provide people options, and they have to feel like they have their needs are getting met as far as what they're interested in from a skills development standpoint.
Anyone else want to add to that?
I would add, I agree with that completely, and also employee data security, because data breaches, the phishing emails, I mean, they're getting more and more sophisticated texts. I mean, I think continuing employee education and vigilance around their own data security, but then at the enterprise level, making sure that your data is secure, I think will only be more important from a strategic standpoint and an employee and client customer trust level going forward.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. I just got a call today. Somebody asked me about cybersecurity training. And so, yes, you definitely might want to consider that in the next 3 to 5 years, having that training for all your employees so they don't take your technology. So let's go to the next question here. What are some HR technologies that can help your employees maintain their health and wellness? I think Carly spoke to this a little bit, but anyone else want to add to that?
I think I would just reiterate that there are so many that you need to streamline and find the ones that best align with your values, your mission, what makes sense for your employees, because that's part of the overall reason they might want to stay, is if they feel seen and valued as a whole person. And that's going to be different for everyone. So maybe one person likes the meditation app and one person would just never even download it because that's not their thing. That doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, but also you probably don't want 100 different apps. So I think it's finding a strategy that aligns with what you're trying to accomplish, and maybe ask. I mean, I think again, it's the obvious, but you can ask people what is important to them. You don't have to pretend like you or the executive leaders know everything. And people really appreciate their input, as long as you're going to do something about it. And now I'll go down a rabbit hole, so I'll stop there. But there's plenty. Align it to your vision and ask people what they want, and then try to streamline it.
Anyone else want to add? I think Cliff said it earlier. It's now that we're in this model of hybrid and remote, you definitely find yourself doing more surveys now of your employees to see what it is that they want. And so, Cliff, I think you were going to add something.
Yeah, I just want just a quick plug on something that I almost missed because I almost threw out the home mailer that came about it. There's a company called Sword Health that we partnered with, and you get a video chat with a live physical therapist. But before that, you sign up for it, you get a mini tablet, and then after that initial assessment with the live physical therapist, you then follow the regimen that plays out on the tablet every day, right? And it had like monitors you put on your arms and legs, so it gave you feedback on what you're doing that the physical therapist gave you. So there really are some innovative solutions out there that we could probably have a whole day-long session unpacking that. But that's just one quick example.
Thank you, Cliff. All right, we have a couple more questions here. Are there any HR applications for blockchain technology? Carly, do you want to start us out with that?
Yeah, this is definitely going to be on the experimental end of the spectrum. But I recently read about Web3 applications where there are open talent marketplaces that rely on blockchain, and they're promising just to bring more proof points to what workers might claim to be their skills and experience. So the idea is that anyone can say they're a cybersecurity expert on their resume or LinkedIn profile, but if you have accreditations listed on the blockchain, you now have a permanent record of a transaction between a worker and an employer. So I don't think this is necessarily perfected science just yet. I don't think you need to train all of your recruiters on how to navigate Web3 and the blockchain. But I do definitely see more applications of this coming forward, especially I saw a stat today where something like 52% of gig workers are expected to stay in the gig economy through their entire career. So, knowing that we're going to be broadening the definition of talent pool increasingly over the next few years, I think this is probably something that will be really exciting for talent acquisition teams, especially in the future.
Great. Thank you, Carly. Anyone else want to add to that? All right. What are the biggest HR automation problems you've had to solve over the past couple of years?
We've got some pretty simple ones on my end as far as, things from, I think you said it earlier, dashboards are back. So how are we going to get dashboards and metrics up and going in an automated way so we're not, penciling in this spreadsheet and how we're going to calculate those things. And also, some groups are still behind on electronic employee files, and that may seem pretty straightforward, but collecting all of the right forms and getting them up into the cloud or some kind of server or online isn't as straightforward as it may seem. Once you get it all done and you can add to it, great. But that manual process towards automation has been a pretty long road.
Anyone else want to share?
I think that we bring out the best in ourselves through disruption and through times of craziness. And I think over the past few years, we've seen a lot of really interesting applications of a variety of different types of technologies. But the biggest one that I've seen that we're presently solving for is creating talent marketplaces for individuals who are impacted by layoffs during COVID. So automating the matching of impacted individuals to open roles with organizations who are participating in these talent marketplaces. We're working with several state governments as well as the military to enable this kind of mobility of matching people who have been detrimentally impacted by COVID with open opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Cliff, you have anything to add?
I was just gonna take it in a different direction. The biggest HR automation problems I've had to solve are leader expectations on speed to implement and also what automation actually is. Because if the current process is broken and somebody's pounding the table saying automate it, if you don't fix the existing process, all you're doing is making a bad process go faster. So I think as we continue to educate leaders on the options out there and they understand the constraints and the need for POCs or maybe even partnering with other peer companies in your vertical, I think we may actually be in a better place in solving those automation problems that come up because you're seeing it from a macro level instead of just the soda straw of your company.
Thank you all. So we have some time now for some questions from the audience. Does anyone have any questions they'd like answered from the panel? I don't know if I missed any questions along the way.
I have a question for Andrea and her virtual bingo. Is that proprietary or is that going to be like in the virtual goodie bag for attendees today?
Yeah, that's just courtesy of Google. So knock yourself out. We do every other Friday, just a 30-minute casual, whoever wants to get together, and it's a different theme. So we've done virtual trivia, virtual bingo. We've even done watercolor painting. And if you have budget, you could ship people, depending on your size, the little water painting thing, they do it together or make it holiday themed. But using your free technology like video chatting and having different groups with different ideas and events, activities that are not just work meeting checklist related,
Yeah,
highly
that's
recommend.
cool.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that it wasn't something WebMD created, so I appreciate the tip.
Yeah, can't take credit for it.
So we have a question in the chat. What's the biggest mistake you've seen companies make in automating key HR functions, and how do they get, I think they meant past it?
Right off the bat, the thing I've repeated many times that I have seen is we automate and we don't think about the impact to the employee themselves, whether it be a disproportionate impact to a certain group or just you're not treating hourly staff the same as exempt because something in the technology or the app wasn't accessible or they don't have time to do it in the same way. And so you really have to step back and think about the unintended consequences and impacts of what you are putting out there.
And it looks like we have one more question. We're wrapping up soon. We are struggling to build the business case for greater investment in HR technology. Do you have any advice for us?
I think start with the outcomes that you're wanting rather than somebody maybe saying, I know this great vendor that other people have used for, XYZ, the equivalent of a digital Swiss Army knife. So I think just start with the pain points, maybe do surveys in the different business units and figure out if there's a theme that emerges from multiple business units and get those advocates and stakeholders to then champion the roadmap that you want to go down for picking a particular technology.
I couldn't agree more. And I think this is answering both the question about mistakes that I've seen organizations make and, best practices for building a business case. Definitely starting with the outcomes and also determining what is the overarching strategy, because I've seen a lot of organizations invest in a Swiss Army knife when all they wanted was a pair of scissors. So making sure that you are very clear on not only what's the outcome, but what's the best way to get to the outcome, I think is just key up front, showing that you've done your homework.
And one more question, look like we have time for. Any thoughts on strategies to engage and nurture your passive job seekers, the ones who visit your career site but drop off without applying? Any thoughts on strategy to engage them?
Can I say it one more time? What are the images on your website? Are they representative of your group? What language are you using? Is it welcoming? Is it stale and boring? Because people don't want a stale and boring environment. Not that you have to go over the top and use Comic Sans font or anything, but what is it engaging? What is it bringing people? And what are you offering them? Because that's the first step is, am I even interested?
And I would definitely say,
I think it also,
go ahead,
sorry.
Cliff. No, go ahead. Cliff.
I was going to say it also ties in with your mobile strategy. So if you have job seekers that are providing their cell phone, there should be an opt-in on the application process that says, would you like to be informed of opportunities that come up in the future? And then when they do, they get a text that says, hey, you applied for this type of job in the past. We have this role again. Here's the link to apply if you're interested.
It's a great idea.
Yeah, that is good. All right, I think we're almost wrapping up here. Anything else anyone would add to either of those questions, mistakes or passive job seekers, and how to engage them?
I've seen organizations build. I have one client who has 2 million people in its talent pool right now. And that's inclusive of obviously a lot of passive talent. And what they're doing is creating campaigns and hosting events and keeping those people warm, and making, I think, Andrea, your point is very well made, making those feel like very inclusive and exciting opportunities to get a sneak peek into the culture, because you want those people to be actively seeking out your organization versus feeling like you're trying to pull them in.
All right, well, it looks like we're out of time. I want to thank Carly, Andrea, and Clifford for being here with us. It's a great panel and discussion, and I want to thank you all for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank
Great.
you, Loretta. Thank you, Carly, Andrea, and Cliff. This was a wonderful panel discussion. I also want to thank everyone else for joining us today. This session, along with all of today's content, will be available on demand following the event. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate it.